Meeting of the Community Advisory Council, and I am calling the meeting to order at 6 o'clock and asking for a roll call. I'm Nancy Pemberton. I am from District 5, and I am chairing for Lorena Beretta, who is out sick tonight.
I'm Nathan Solomon, District 1, and I'm pretending to be the Vice Chair.
I am John Alden. I am the ILARO Director.
I am Brent Kidder, Lieutenant with the Sheriff's Office.
John Azevedo, District 4.
Alberto Botello, Member at Large.
Casey Jones, District 2.
Imelda Martinez, Distrito 5.
Lizette Camacho with ILRO.
Thank you. And thanks to all of you from the public who are here tonight. Appreciate your attendance. The first thing we need to do is approve the minutes of our December 10th meeting. As you'll recall, we did not have a regular January meeting, we had a strategic workshop. So before I ask for a motion, are there any amendments to the minutes from anybody who is there?
I do have something for the stats,
Okay.
for the immigration statistics that I've been reporting on.
Yeah.
So I got information today that in June, I had reported that there were 50 notifications received from ICE.
Right.
However, during the end of year audit, the jail found that there were 2 that were not logged in a timely manner. They were routed where they needed to go correctly and appropriately, but they weren't logged. So the correct number is actually 52
Okay.
notifications received.
What page is that on?
Page
8.
8.
Thank you.
Okay, even though the minutes reflect what happened in December, we'll go ahead and change it just so that we have.
I just saw that those
accurate
stats
numbers.
were on
That would be
those
good.
minutes, so, and I do recall we actually went through it the last like 6 months.
Right. So just, is there any objection to making that change? If no, and no other changes, take a motion to adopt the minutes.
So moved.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you. There's still one vacancy in District 2. There was a District 1 vacancy, and Supervisor Tomasio has appointed somebody, but they will not be up before the, on the consent calendar for the Board of Supervisors until later in February. So we will meet her at the next meeting, but she was at the January strategic workshop. Great. Oral reports and comments. Over to you.
Want me to start?
Yeah.
All right. So there were approximately 14 events that the Sheriff's Office engaged in since the last time we met, including the Pen Grove Holiday Parade, 2 different presentations at the Police Academy. One was regarding community-oriented policing, one was regarding social media. There was a Henry I presentation at the Holy Spirits Men's Club. We attended Martin Luther King celebration. There were approximately 5 different digital safety presentations at 3 at Mark West Charter School, 2 at Reebly School. We attended the Community Helpers Day, and Sergeant Valencia continues to be a guest on Sonoma County Spanish Radio. Regarding immigration statistics, so December of 2025, I don't believe I reported on, so I'll report on those. There were 69 notifications received from ICE. There were 8 requests for information. The Sheriff's Office only responded or returned to 6 notifications. There were 0 arrests by ICE in the detention facility during December. For year-end totals, I did get this information too, so for 2025 totals, just for information, there were 601 notifications received from ICE throughout the year, 152 requests for information, We only responded to or returned 69, and there were 20 arrests by ICE in our detention facility. Then regarding January statistics, so January 2026, we received 51 notifications from ICE. We received 7 requests for information. We returned 10 notifications, and there were 2 arrests in the facility last month. And I already went over the change from last June. And the only other thing I have to report is that, actually my unit, it affects my unit directly. We are getting another position on a temporary basis. So we are getting a second detention sergeant assigned to the professional standards unit. That sergeant starts next Tuesday. So I'm excited to have another team member be a part of our unit and to help divvy up some of the caseload accordingly. That's all I got.
Okay, so for the ILO Director's Report, I want to say yay about getting another position at Professional Standards. I think that's great. You know, a conversation we're having a lot is how many people does it really take to run that unit well, and I agree, more needed, and I think that's wonderful. So I'm really glad to hear that. That's good news. A few things from ILARO. For those of you who are on the CAC, you'll remember that at our strategic planning meeting, our retreat last month, all the ad hocs are going to come up with some SMART goals. And so I'm giving you a gentle reminder to make sure that you've gotten those to Lizette and the rest of our team, so that she and I and Rania can make sure to put those into a single document to get to the Board of Supervisors explaining what your work plan is for this upcoming year. We do that every year. Now's the time. Hopefully you'll have those almost done. You might recall from our conversation at the strategic planning meeting that we thought about whether we could have that all ready for today's meeting, and we thought that was too tight, but folks did say they thought they could have them done probably by the end of tonight's meeting. So if you can get those emailed in to me and Lizette, this week, that would be great, please, so we can make sure it's an agenda item for the next meeting. I thought, had a really great strategic planning meeting. I really enjoyed the conversations there, and definitely had some new voices in the room. And it sounded like you guys were all really on fire, actually, with coming up with new topics, and that was actually very exciting to be at. Since we saw you last, we also came out with the Community-Oriented Policing Project report. I had previewed that for you a little bit in December. That came out in late December. I would urge all those CAC members to take a look at that. That's mostly the product of Sonoma State University and Dr. Emily Asensio there, in a partnership that was created by my predecessor, Carlene Navarro. And a lot of the takeaways there are that some of the needs that people have in the west side of the county and east side of the county are a little bit different. And in addition to that, language, remains, I think, a challenge. There were only modest differences between how much people who spoke Spanish as their primary language felt treated in their interactions with deputies as compared to people who speak English, but there was a difference. And so we recommended continuing to hire deputies who speak Spanish, which the Sheriff's Office has done a pretty good job of. And also to consider looking at some models used elsewhere in the Bay Area to do some training about how to interact with people who maybe are a little uncomfortable or nervous about talking to law enforcement. There's a great program done by Stanford University and the City of Oakland a few years back that we think might actually work real well here. That could be part of the budget presentation or budget ask for the Sheriff's Office that we want. So I'd encourage folks here at the CAC to take a look at that report and see what you think of it.
Have you already done what you're going to do with that report, or is it going to be disseminated in some fashion?
Well, we sent it out first in the newsletter, and it's also available on our website. And it will be included in reference to it. A summary of it will also be in our next annual report. It's part of what we're doing this year. And those are the main things we're going to do with it. So if others have other ideas of what to do with it or see some other follow-up, I think that'd be great. The county is working on a language access policy right now. which, once that's available, might give us some additional thinking about how that could help with providing translation services. It's been a topic the county's been working on for a long time, so I'll be curious to see what that product looks like too. We'll be informed by some of the work we do here. Also on our website, you'll now find an audit that we did in a deputy-involved shooting over in Sonoma Valley, in the town of Sonoma. And one of the reasons why that is publicly available is that, most of the time our audits we can't show you, because that's how state law is written. It doesn't allow us to do that. But this particular one, because it involves a deputy-involved shooting, state law does allow us to share it with you. No one was killed in that case, thankfully. And so for that reason, ILRO's independent investigative power was not triggered under Measure P by that case, but our audit power was. And so you can take a look at that if you're interested in seeing that. So that was a topic in our most recent newsletter, and it's also on our website if you want to read it. I think a takeaway for me on that one was that while I think there's a lot of consensus between the Sheriff's Office and ILRO about the mechanics of the shooting and the reasons for using force there, we continue to have a disconnect about whether deputies in cases like that should be interviewed administratively by professional standards. We think that should be done in every shooting. The Sheriff's Office is not on the same page with us about that, so there's some discussion of that disagreement in that audit. Another topic, outreach. So a bunch of us from ILRO and also the CAC got to go to the Farm Bureau crab feed last weekend, which was fascinating. The Farm Bureau has been reaching out to us and saying they're eager to have people who have connections to ag involved in the conversations we have here at the CAC, which makes sense given how big a part of the industry ag is and how they rely on law enforcement resources a lot of the time too. So I was there. John Azevedo was there. Alberto Mateo was there, and I think we all had a really good time. I talked to a lot of people, and wow, is that a big event? If you've never been, it's massive. So I think that was a great way to raise some visibility and have some interesting conversations with people in the ag community. Pardon me. I went to NACOL's annual board meeting in January. That was in Louisville, Kentucky. That's where the next conference will be. So that's going to be in November. So for those of you who are interested in going to NACOL, think about that, mid-November in Louisville, Kentucky. Louisville, you may recall, is the place where Breonna Taylor was killed in the course of serving a warrant, and the shooting that occurred during that warrant service. It's also a city that has an inspector general as a result of the city trying to create some oversight over policing. And that person right now is Ed Harness, who's also a member of the NACOL board, and so he'll be one of our hosts, so you get to learn a little more about what's going on in Louisville if you decide to go there. A little budget update. It's the season where agencies and departments inside Sonoma County start getting information from the county executive and our finance team about what the budget's going to look like. It is going to be a tighter year. There is just going to be less money. One of the things we were just talking about internally at ILRO is that one of our jobs is to manage budgeting and resourcing for the CAC. That's part of how we provide staff support to you. And I think between now and our next CAC meeting, it'd probably be good for me and Lizette and your chair and vice chair to sit down and give you a preview of how budget works and see if they have some input for us. Figure out whether that might be an agenda item for next time, so you're a little better informed. For sure, I think we're just going to have a little less money for some of the outreach stuff that we like to do, some of the contracting that we like to do with some vendors, and or some of the travel and education we do. And certainly, to the extent that Lizette is managing a budget for the CAC, we'd certainly like to be talking to you all about what your priorities are. If we have a little less money, what would you prioritize? So that's a preview for next meeting, probably, if anyone, the chair and vice chair, choose to agendize. I'm going to tell you about that now so you can start thinking about your priorities. I always like to make sure that we have a few minutes, to also hear from Lizette about other outreach opportunities, so I'll hand that over to her.
I did email all of you. There's an event that Los Cien is having this Friday. It's titled Understanding the History Behind the Term Latinx. If you still want to attend, let me know. I think I can still get tickets for Friday. We will have a booth, so and it's 10:30 to 1 o'clock. I think they're going to be selling lunch or food options. Also, Los Cien is hosting with another agency, Sonoma County Volunteer Fair, and that's happening March 31st, which is also a holiday, but I still signed up to do that event, and it's for it's a holiday. Cesar Chavez.
Oh, okay.
It's 4 to 7 p.m. and I believe that's at the backdrop. They're also going to have an immigration update in May. They don't have who the panel is or details yet. It's too soon. So once they have that, I will share that with you all. And they're also having a candidate forum for Supervisor District 4. And that's happening April. I don't remember the date, but I will also share those with you all. And that's all I have that is coming up.
John, a few weeks ago, there was a tentative ruling in the litigation where Iolera was seeking clarity, I guess, on the breadth of its subpoena power in the whistleblower context. There was oral argument after that, and I don't know what has happened since. So
Nothing else, which is
solicit?
why I didn't report on it. Well, for those of you who haven't seen these processes before, sometimes judges, in this case a 3-judge panel of an appellate court here in California, will tell, pardon me, some of the parties in a given case what they're thinking before they actually reach a final ruling, and then invite the parties to have conversation about the court's thinking so far. And they call that a tentative ruling. They're not bound to stick with it, and they sometimes do change, sometimes only a little, sometimes very substantially between the time they're issued and the time the court reaches a final ruling. So we know that that court has, pursuant to a California rule, 90 days from the date of that argument in mid-January to issue a response, and that puts us out into mid-April before they absolutely have to have a decision. And I haven't said a whole lot about it publicly because I don't know what their final decision is. I only have a tentative, and
No, that's fair.
I want to make sure I know what they actually think.
Is there anything that's appropriate to say about the oral argument and how that went?
Well, oral argument's such a curious process. One of the things that I think lawyers would say ideally should happen is that the judges get to kick around some ideas. And it was very interesting to watch these judges digging in, and these justices digging in, and they were all very engaged and all had very thoughtful questions. So that was really interesting to watch. I did attend and got to sort of see the back and forth with all of them. It left me thinking that, they might modify their tentative ruling before they issue a final ruling. I couldn't say for sure. And I think, one of the key issues we still have in Sonoma County is, perspective from some of our labor associations that the letters of agreement in regards to Measure P actually rewrite or alter Measure P. And an opinion from some of the attorneys that work for the county that that's not possible, that it can't possibly do that, and therefore it just supplements Measure P. And that question to some extent comes up in that argument. So it'll be very interesting to see if we get back. It'll provide some guidance for all of us about how we do this work. And I think we're all looking forward to getting more of that since we've been in disagreement about some of these issues. I am sure that I'll give you a very detailed report once we actually have a final ruling, but to the extent that there are things in there I liked, I don't want to jinx it. And to the extent there are things in there I didn't like, I'm kind of crossing my fingers they change it. And in both cases, it's probably good for me to say very little until they're done making up their minds.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Appreciate the interest.
Any other questions from the CAC for either Brent or John?
I did forget to mention something, which is I need to leave a little early tonight. So
Oh,
if
go
I have
ahead.
questions, I will take off, but.
No, go ahead.
No, that was it.
Oh,
Just that I need to
okay.
leave early.
Oh, great, okay. So now we'll take comments and questions from the public. Susan?
3 minutes.
My
3
question-
minutes. Yeah,
my
3 minutes.
question's For Brent. I was talking to someone yesterday who was a retired probation officer for Sonoma County, a long time ago, because he's 80 now. But he was saying, and there was no ICE then, there was the INS. But he said that many more of the interactions with the INS went through the probation office and not through the sheriff or the county jail. And he didn't know whether that was still the case. And I don't know if you know whether that's still the case. But does probation interact with ICE? I don't know if you know.
I have no idea. You'd have to ask probation and or ICE.
Okay, because
I have no idea.
you don't communicate on anything like that. Okay, that's what I wanted to clarify. Right.
Jim, did you have your hand raised?
Yeah, question for John. I'll confess I
3
did not.
minutes.
I'll be less than that. Confess I did not read the audit that came out, but that shooting in Sonoma was in 2022. Does the audit talk at all about why it took till now to, I mean, I remember reading it in the paper and it seems like a pretty clear-cut case.
Yeah, well, one of the things that's included in that case is an explanation of the timeline, for how long it takes. And, you know, when it's an audit, not independent investigation, the timing is generally that an outside law enforcement agency does a criminal investigation first, that goes to the district attorney, then the sheriff's office professional standards, they'll figure out what kind of administrative review they want to do, and then that comes to ILRO and we take a look at it. And we are all trying to make those go faster, but I can say across the board in almost every jurisdiction, the amount of time it takes to go through all those steps on a shooting tends to be measured in years, not months, pretty much everywhere. And that is frustrating, I think, for the public because there's such high-profile issues, but they still end up taking a while. We have been, I think, working really collaboratively with professional standards to get cases done faster as a general rule. And that's one reason we've stepped up at ILRO, that's one reason we've got them stepping up. And we also have some agreements we reached about a year ago about deadlines we each try to meet when we're doing our work. And we're trying to hold ourselves to those in ILRO. Like one of them is we try to get our work done within 120 days of getting the matter from the sheriff's office. And so far, most of the time we're able to do that. And we missed it's been by a couple of days. So I think that's turning out to be a good rule of thumb for us. But yeah, these shooting cases do take a really long time.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Actually, I had a question,
Sure.
John. I understand that you said that there was some pushback from the Sheriff's Department about interviewing professional standards, interviewing an officer involved in the shooting. What is the pushback?
Well, I think we have a difference of opinion about whether it's required. Like in other places where I've done this kind of oversight, usually we would, anytime a deputy or police officer was involved with shooting somebody, there would be a criminal investigation by an outside law enforcement agency to see if anyone had committed a crime, including whether someone in law enforcement committed a crime. And then there would often be interviews there, and they're usually about that one issue, you know, who committed what crime. And then usually, in the other places I've worked, we do a subsequent follow-up interview where we then ask some more. Like, well, okay, let's talk about what happened before and then during and after. And other than just the shoot itself, you know, did we, as an agency, make sure that we made all the appropriate notifications to other people in the chain of command when something started to happen? Did everybody involved use their body-worn cameras correctly? Were there other kinds of uses of force other than a shooting, like say a taser or a baton that was used? And if so, did that happen in a way that's consistent with policy? And in the follow-up, did everybody render medical care appropriately according to policy, make the right reports? make sure to have a, clean and effective investigation after, right? So it's a broader look than just fatal use of force. And I think the way in which the Sheriff's Office and ILRO have a disagreement right now is on a few of these cases. They've told us, and Brent could say more if he thinks I've got this wrong, but my understanding from the Sheriff's Office is that they feel that oftentimes the initial interview that those deputies do with the criminal investigator from another law enforcement agency is sufficient. And we think those interviews usually are so short and about so few issues that it's important to take a broader look and have a further conversation with the deputy. So it's a disagreement about best practice in the field.
Is that, just a follow-up question, is that being brought down by the union, or is that the sheriff's understanding of the policy?
My understanding is just a past practice of the Sheriff's Office and a disagreement about how they like to do those kinds of investigations as opposed to how ILRO likes to do it.
So it's not a protocol question, it's just a question of past practice, it's not necessarily in writing?
Right. Yeah.
The only thing I'll add to that is that it's not just strictly the interview, the criminal interview, it's the totality of the circumstances, the reports that are reviewed, the BWC that's reviewed, the dispatch audio that's reviewed, it's all the evidence that's in the case.
Slow down. You still have somebody who, even though we don't have an interpreter right here.
Gotcha. Did it work? Do I need to say it again?
Slowly.
Maybe
Que
a
lo
little
diga?
slow.
Say it one more time, but slow.
So it's not just the criminal interview that's done, the investigations or the reviews, the administrative reviews that we do on that take in everything to effect, that all the evidence that's available to us in professional standards. So it's the incident reports that are written, the BWC footage, the body-worn camera footage that's reviewed, it's the dispatch audio that's reviewed, it's the totality of it. It's not just based on the one interview. It's the entirety and the totality of the evidence that's available leads us to make definitive findings.
I'm going to take a flyer and say that how the professional standards unit does what it does is of profound interest to this group, and I think is probably part of our responsibility. And I think that we as a group should probably explore how to understand that more fully and what we might ask of the lieutenant and ILRO in terms of future presentation, discuss, there's a lot of work to do to kind of hone in, what is it that we would like to hear. But honestly, I can't think of anything more central to this body and what its interests ought to be. So,
And if you don't mind me saying, the ad hoc that you're setting up, and I think, Nathan, you're on that too, and some other members of the CAC, about some of these practices would probably be an effective place to ask those questions. I'd be happy to make sure we have ILRO staff available for your ad hoc meetings to talk to you about what we're doing and what we see. And then I would imagine we can have some conversation with the Sheriff's Office about
of course, yeah.
their perspective too. Glad you're interested.
Anyone else? Okay, moving on, there's the CAC public correspondence, and I don't think we had any to report. So the next items are our business items. The first one is the discussion and possible action on adopting the final revised ad hoc how-to manual, which is...
Guide. Nancy. Guide. I thought I had changed it.
Oh, no, yes, it's actually a guide, not a
Yeah,
manual,
yeah.
excuse me.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you for...
Yeah.
Let's see.
Page
It
12.
begins at page 12 of the packet and goes through to page 22. And we looked at this in December, and people had some concerns, and so I did some wordsmithing to make much of it sound less mandatory and more best practices. So I hope that you've all had a chance to look at it and are ready to discuss this and hopefully approve it tonight. So I will leave it at that and see if there are any comments or questions from the committee members, council members. Council members. We get committee or council.
Easy.
No? Any questions or comments from the public? Well, I hope that means that, oh, excuse me.
Sorry.
Susan?
Is there anything in here, and I think there's not anything in the guidelines that we created for community engagement, about how to interact with the supervisors to let them know what we're doing? Is there?
There is in the playbook, but not on the, this is for just the ad hocs.
I know,
And-
I just thought the ad hocs might want to communicate with, was there any?
Yeah, there's something in the playbook about each individual member is responsible for reporting to their district supervisor, and that's in the playbook, but there's nothing here in this ad hoc guide that says while you're in the process, you should be communicating with supervisors. Okay, any other questions, comments? Do I have a motion to approve this guide?
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Casey. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you, great.
Thank you, Nancy.
It's good to have this finalized, thank you. And it will go up on the website as well, and so it will be available for us. We'll figure out the best place to put it in a very awkward website. And the awkwardness of the website is not Biolera's problem, or fault. It's our problem, but it's not our fault. So it'll go up there, we'll figure out the best place to put it. Discussion and possible feedback from community members who attended the strategic planning workshop. So this is an invitation for the members who attended to respond if they would like. So, Jim?
So I have three things. The first, and I'm still right now uncomfortable with a strict timeline for having the SMART goals ready so fast. Because if we do poor goals, then we're gonna have to adjust them down the road. And I feel that's being pushed by staff to have them ready for the board, not for us to have a good process. So that's a discomfort I have. And then I had recommended two things that didn't gain traction with anybody. And both of them I said, these are gonna rear their ugly heads again. So I'm just gonna say to keep your eyes out, because they'll probably show up in the next ILARO annual report or the one after that. And it's the healthcare in the jails and the sheriff's communication policies on social media and predetermining outcomes of events with how they communicate. And those are just things that have been showing up every year or two in an annual report, and at some point, the CAC should look at those.
Any other comments from them? Okay. The next item is, actually, this is sort of I will say is kind of a revisit of what I discussed in at the strategic planning workshop, but I wanted to just present it here so that we could have a final report from the community engagement and that ad hoc from last year, and it could go up on the website. So I need to ask, this is This is just receiving this, we don't have to vote on it?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is just the, you know, you all saw this at the, or heard me report this out at the strategic planning workshop, and so I won't bore you by doing that again, but I'm just putting it out here so that it's on our agenda and you can, I am presenting it to you in writing. And it will now be able to go up on the website, so that's all on that business item. So I think we are done with the business, and we're going to adjourn at the very early time of 6:35 to work on our ad hocs. And how about we plan to come back at, is 7:15 okay? That gives us 40 minutes? And if people are, he left, but that'll give Jim some time to work on those SMART goals that he feels pressured to do tonight.
I don't feel that pressure to finish it tonight.
Okay.
Which ad hoc are you?
That, you know, I think, has anybody, I know that the ad hoc on immigration needs to meet, because we were behind, we didn't even start our SMART goals. We've had one meeting since to do that, and we need to meet. Trevor's not here, so we can't cut his jail programming. I'm assuming that the Iolero Investigative Authority group would like to meet tonight.
We can.
We can. We could also not, I mean, either way. I think.
Language access, Lorena is a significant part of that, and since she's not here, she won't be needed. We won't need language access. And so there's community engagement, ICE and immigration, and Iolero Investigative Authority. Those three. Anybody on more than one of those? And Alberto?
I'm the chair for community engagement, but also on immigration.
Okay. Do
I'm the
you,
opposite of that.
This is a little bit the difficulty of
Yeah.
having ad hoc meetings during the course of these meetings, is there's some
Overlap.
thumb twiddling
yeah,
that
no,
happens.
I know that the other difficulty is that ad hocs aren't working. I mean, the reason we started doing it here is because they weren't meeting between meetings, and so we needed to kind of do that in person to make that happen. So, yes, John.
Well, I don't want to interrupt, but I just have so I'm on the unfortunate situation where the two ad hocs I'm involved with, neither of the chairs are here, so we're not meeting. So, so I was gonna, I mean, I don't know if we can amend this in any way at this point, probably not with Brown Act, but in a perfect world, I would say that we continue with the full agenda and maybe have the ad hocs meet at the end of our meeting for those of us that can't meet or maybe don't need to meet tonight. That would be my 2 cents, versus having me sit here for 40. I'm happy to join a conversation, but
Okay.
anyway.
Okay. Is there any objection?
I brought my meeting.
And did you bring the pattern for the red hat? Does everybody know about the red hats? The Minneapolis Red Hats?
No.
So there's okay, this is,
I brought one.
I'll tell you at the end. This is not on our agenda, so I'll have to tell you after we adjourn. But is there any objection to going forward and doing the rest of the agenda other than the
The
feedback? There's just a few things. There's,
right, the only thing is that usually you present your work from you present your work from your ad hocs. And I have a brief agenda that I can pre-present, say this is what our ad hoc is going to be speaking of, but that way we don't have to, we need to reconvene to present what you met, or you can waive that, but I think that needs to be part of the
I would like to reconvene and report back.
Right.
So what I've been suggesting is that we now take up items 10, 11, 12, 13, and then adjourn for the committee work, reconvene just for the committee reports. Okay?
I'm not,
I don't see how that.
honestly not sure what that gets us.
Yeah.
If
Allow
we're,
John to leave if he wants to.
if
That's what he has.
if we're gonna have the, okay,
I mean, you can say no, you can vote against it. This is a,
no, I'm not voting against it. What I'm saying is, I don't find the carving out 30 or 40 minutes in the middle of a meeting for an ad hoc meeting to be a useful practice.
I agree
never,
with that.
for me, it never has been.
No, I agree. I don't know how productive we are in those sessions.
Right. Ad hocs can meet and should meet and don't need this carve out in order to meet, in my view.
And if they're not meeting on a monthly basis or
That's a
semi-reg,
separate
that's a
problem.
separate problem that we shouldn't be trying to fix in the course of like an in-person meeting, in my opinion. If that makes sense.
okay, well, let me say that there's two items, there's two parts of it. One is that we need to be meeting on a regular basis.
Mhm.
Sometimes our meetings, the substance, the content of the meetings is pretty slim. Tonight is an example. The ad hocs have a lot of work to do. People have to be here anyway, so the idea was use this time. One of the things that could happen is that the ad hocs could decide before meeting here tonight whether or not they want to meet and what they're going to do during that 30 or 40 minutes, which would of course then be a more productive session. So I am, we have to get together. And so to have 30 or 40 minutes that you're here for already, and to say that that's not useful to you, sounds to me like you're not preparing for it. And
Or
you're just sort of showing up.
Tonight I wouldn't even have known which ones were meeting.
Well,
Because I'm on two of them, so I
but
was
you
like,
could have
I was
worked
like,
that out with
I
your
didn't-
ad hocs.
well, I would have had to meet with both of them just to get everyone to agree.
Email with them, Nate, that's what email is all about. I mean, you guys,
I can't actually email with both of them without violating the Brown Act.
you can one at a time.
Well, that's arguable, okay, yeah, maybe.
You
But
you can email them through Lizette. Okay, we will bring this up at the next meeting, whether we should continue to do it, but tonight it's on the agenda. Nobody objected to the agenda when we passed it, we approved it at the beginning of this meeting. So we're gonna go ahead and have the ad hocs, and we're gonna have the three that I identified because community engagement. If you have one or the other, you can choose which one to go to. If you're chair, I would suggest that you chair your meeting. So community engagement, ICE, and the ILO Investigative Authority. So,
At the end of the meeting.
huh?
At the end of the meeting.
Well, apparently not, because I didn't get a motion to do that, second.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so we're gonna just, we're gonna adjourn right now, and we will be. Okay, we're back in session.
But North County, there's always a special fund.
Okay, well, that was pretty productive, I have to say.
Oh, well, I hope they hire her.
We're back at 7:16, and the next item on the agenda is to report out. So those ad hocs that met just now can report out. Community engagement. Alberto, did you guys set a date?
No, they were finishing up theirs, but we had met on Friday the 6th with our committee members, minus Trevor, and what I will be doing is following up with the committee to set a monthly cadence on the meetings. Got a couple of community members that I need to add on there as well. Ronnie was on our call, so she took our notes and prepped us for our SMART goals, and she will be following up with the roadmap, so I'll have even more to present at the next meeting. And then we have our 3 SMART goals, which I will be looking for volunteers for our committee and our community members. So
Great.
we're well on our way.
ICE and Immigration, I'm the chair. We just met, we had drafted 3 goals that we are in the process of refining and setting timetables, and we'll send another draft around the early part of next week and hopefully get everything to the staff by next Friday. Language access is Lorena. I know she did have a draft of Sonoma County's language access plan and sent it around to us, but I have not had a chance to look at it. I don't know if anybody else did.
I looked at it, but it was just pretty straightforward. I mean, there's nothing, anyway. It needs further investigation.
Okay. ILO Investigative Authority.
Yep, we just met, and I have to say it was a very productive meeting, so I'm kind of eating my words before our break a little bit. But we went over, we have 3 goals, we have rough dates by when those will be completed by, and we kind of started stepping through some of the tasks. There are a lot of tasks and a lot of research-oriented tasks as well, but we'll definitely be ready by the next meeting to present all those and kind of start covering them. And we will have tasks for other CAC members to carry on the work with their supervisors and give them some talking points as well to go over with them. So
Great.
look for that.
NGL programming did not meet tonight.
We did.
Oh,
Yeah, we're a growing, we're a growing ad hoc. So,
Right.
so Lieutenant Kidder's gonna send us a list of the current programming and send it to Lizette to share with our group. And then we are gonna work on trying to get a tour of the jail and investigate some of the programming and how it's being implemented, and if you want to add anything.
That's it.
great, thank you. In terms of meeting the needs of the final report to the Board of Supervisors, I think if we have our goals, we don't have to have all of the, I think the important thing is to have our goals set. And if you don't have your tasks and the timelines done by next Friday, that's okay. I think that the bigger thing is to, the deadline is not just to report to the Board of Supervisors. The deadline is just to get us moving, so that we, March is a third of the way through the year, so let's just keep moving. But think in terms of getting your goals in, refined and in. So, and we all know that things change. That hopefully we are flexible enough to say, okay, this goal isn't working. This is not what we're trying to do, and we change it during the year. That's not a big deal. Okay.
I just have one clarification. The deadline for you to get it onto the agenda is February 20th?
So, are there any comments on the reports from CAC members? Questions from the public? This is something on the committee reports. Anybody up there now? Okay. Okay, so open time for public comment on anything within the purview of ILO that's not on the agenda tonight.
Sorry, if I could do public comment on the previous.
Oh, sure, okay, sure.
Just for institutional memory, there was a point in time where the CAC did have presenters on topics of immigration from the Public Defender's Office, from other organizations, also on topics of unsheltered, sheriff and unsheltered people. And so if the CAC so chose to have training on SB 54 or the Truth Act, I would make myself available, although there are county employed paid people to do so at the Public Defender's Office as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any public comment on anything not on the agenda for tonight, but within the CAC's purview? Yes, Susan?
Yeah, I've been hearing that the Congress is considering legislation that would give the federal government the authority to order sheriff's offices and police departments to carry out the duties that ICE carries out. Really deputize this. Is that crossing anybody's mind at this point, or are we just waiting to see whether it happens?
It hasn't crossed my mind.
Okay.
How's that?
Because I realized I was at the city council yesterday and they were talking, and Cregan was saying, yeah, we're not doing any of that, you know. But then I thought, oh, yeah, they're talking about this legislation. That doesn't mean it will pass, but it sounds like it certainly could. And I'm just wondering
Well, thank you.
who's preparing for this.
Right.
I didn't do my 5 calls today, but I didn't be part of 5 calls.
Any other public comment? Was that a public comment?
No, it was a whisper.
Requests for future agenda items. Any future agenda items that you would like us to?
Well, I would
Consider-
love to second what Denise put out in terms of having short educational visits would be amazing. And you've done that many times before, but they don't even have to be long, just, you know, educating us on these topics would be thrilling.
Okay.
Third, that, because I believe that will help with our community engagement.
Yes.
And those topics presented.
Okay. So Bernice suggested mentioned 2 topics, and other.
SB 54 and the Truth Act?
Correct. I just was giving examples of ones that have happened in the past.
Right.
There's been SB 54 and the Truth Act, but there has also been community members to come in to talk about, you know, what they're seeing with unsheltered folks and the sheriff, based on CBOs that work with communities that are unsheltered.
Yeah, and we've done a number. We actually have done a number of those presentations, just not real recently. Last year we had a large number of them. That is, I've got it down here. Any other future agenda items that you want to speak to? Okay. CAC announcements. I want to just report 2 things. One is that perhaps, I think I mentioned this at the January workshop, but Lorena and I met with the president and the president of DSA and another former member, a leader. He's now in management, so he's not officially part of that part of DSA. He's part of a different bargaining unit. So we met with them in December and talked about some differences of opinion, and also one of the things that we did talk about is the possibility is working on the issue of having more bilingual sheriff's deputies, which was raised in the context of the Pelaez Chavez killing and the lack of communication during that episode. And then more recently, just last week, Lorena and I met at the suggestion of Sheriff Ingram. We met with the president or the chair, I think, of their CREED committee, which is their kind of CAC. And those people, I think she said there were a dozen of them. Anyway, it doesn't matter. That they meet quarterly, and we have been invited to, and John also was invited by Sheriff Ingram to their March 26th meeting to talk about what CAC and ILR do. So we're going to be doing that.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand what that group is.
It's like, it's like a group of volunteers, they apply and are interviewed by somebody in the sheriff's department, and then they are appointed to serve on this committee, and they do sort of, they make policy recommendations, they can do some community outreach. They set goals very similar to the way things that we do. But I think that they've been a little bit moribund, and they're looking to sort of boost their presence again. They've been around for, I think Nancy said that it was either an ESSEC, I think it was an ESSEC.
They go back longer than that.
Oh, really?
That's what, yeah.
It goes back to Freitas.
Freitas, yeah, okay. So anyway, we're gonna be meeting with them on March 26th, and we'll know more about it then.
Are you gonna meet with KSA again?
We'll be following up with them, yeah.
Chair, as to, and I'm sorry, I haven't, Bernice Espinosa. As to adding more bilingual deputies, this is a long systemic problem within the county, period, that the testing and adequacy of their language abilities is extremely poor. As someone who's had to do the test, anyone who's taken a high school class could probably pass it. Whereas Riverside County, you were tested by different skill, and you got different labels of bilingual 1, bilingual 2, and based on your level of assessment, you were allowed to do certain things. I would definitely say that looking into how other counties assess bilingualism, because there are, not just in the sheriff's department, but in many county departments where they may have had a Spanish literature degree in college and can read, but they can't speak a lick, or may have had Spanish spoken at home. But I've seen in cases of my own representing people where they say, you know, why they use flame instead of fire? Why fire? And the person is like to cook, to like it, the language assessment is, the language ability is really low, and marking the box like, oh yes, we have these bilingual people does not mean that they actually can communicate effectively, especially in these very critical situations of police contact.
Okay, thank you. Any other announcements? Discussion of possible topics to publicize in the newsletter?
Well, the final order when it comes out, I mean,
For sure.
you know, I was really hoping it'd be out by now. So, and apparently they have 3 months, but
Thank you.
likely not.
Anybody else? Public or?
Lawyers
CIC
usually
members?
take all the time they have available to them. So, they have 90 days, they'll probably do it in 90 days.
So we announce the ad hocs that have been created and ask people if they want to become involved in those ad
Yeah,
hocs?
that's a good idea too.
Oh, okay.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? If not, we will adjourn at 7:32. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
See you all later.
I haven't asked.